Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, so welcome, listeners. Here with us today is Sam Levin, who, in my personal, humble opinion, may quite be one of the most kind and inquisitive individuals that I know. He is what I often refer to as a real life Waldo, traveling and exploring the world with a keen sense of curiosity and really passion, a deep passion for life, which is something that I really respect. And in all of the doing that he does, we're really lucky because we get to kind of follow Sam all across the world and live vicariously through him because he's very active on social media. So I'm grateful for that. And so we'll be talking to Sam about his travels and what it is he experiences throughout his travels. Also, what is really interesting about Sam, one of the many qualities that are interesting about Sam, is that he works for this cool company called Bucket Listers. And Bucket Listers is a social media company and website that helps people find and book experiences in cities all over the world, many of which Sam has explored. So we'll be talking a bit about that and then how Sam, in all the doing that he does, manages to find balance. And really, I feel deep fulfillment in what it is you do. So without further ado, welcome, Sam.
Hi,
Thank you.
Sam. Of
Thank you. Hi, Annie. Hi, Courtney. Thanks for having me.
Our
course.
pleasure. Our pleasure. So, Sam, I mentioned for listeners, and I know a bit about what it is you do, but I really want you to talk about what it is you do for bucket listers because I find it so exciting and interesting.
Cool. So Bucket Listers is your guide, depending on what market you live in, New York, Chicago, LA, 20 different markets in the United States and even more around the world. Your guide for the best things to do in those cities, really checking off that bucket list. It's for locals that are in that city, trying to keep the market really fresh, trying to plan date nights, trying to plan group outings with their friends, anything from a chicken wing festival, food festivals like that, wine festivals to ceviche making classes or, anything that is experiential and really tied to the theme of bucket listers is more than just the city, but it's this passion for travel, this passion for exploration that we'll probably dive into just how well it overlaps with my personal life as well.
Yeah, and I can say one of the events that I went to with my husband and my three sons, which was a total hit, and I know Bucket Listers was part of, was the Fanatics Festival. It was literally like every kid and adult's dream come true in terms of meeting some of the most well-respected athletes, from wrestlers to basketball players to
Yep.
one of my kid's favorites, a special gymnast that I won't mention her name. I'll probably get a lot of
Yeah.
yelling and why did you embarrass me? But cool event. So I know also that in all the work that you do for bucket listers, like you're very focused on career growth and
Mhm.
your job with them entails a lot of traveling, as we mentioned. So I'm interested in knowing, how do you balance the sort of busyness of being a person who really is focused on growing what it is you do, strengthening your understanding of the business, but also balancing in time for friends, loved ones, which I know you value so much in life.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt this is a startup. We're bootstrapped. I've been with the company for 3.5 years and seen a lot of growth, especially after COVID when events were coming back. It's been a goal of mine to live in different markets that we're in. So I grew up in Chicago. I'm very close to my Philly family. I was born in Boston. I lived in Austin, Texas. I now live in New York. All of those are markets of ours. So again, it kind of stays with that pattern of curiosity and learning about what markets have and the demographics within them. For example, we don't do very well selling yoga in Austin, Texas, because there's a lot of free yoga. Everyone's outdoors. They all have rock climbing friends and active friends. So maybe we steer a little bit differently. It took 6 months to 8 months of living in that market to really understand what would sell well versus what wouldn't. New York, Chicago, some of these bigger markets, a lot of things sell really well, but there could be some more seasonality to it. Austin, for example, shuts down during the summer. Chicago gets pretty cold during the winter.
I love Chicago, but not a place I want to live in the winter.
I
Yeah.
would. Courtney would not. I would.
Oh,
It was 98 degrees, Sam. One day we were having a podcast. She had the windows open. I'm like, I love you so much, but like that's not what my people do. Like I can't. I'm melting from over here. Quick
100%.
question. So, did you always want to do something like this? Like, was this always in your blood, or how did this come about?
It's a great question. When I left college, there's this theme that I've spoken about on other podcasts. It's stepping stones. My goal was to move to New York. That was the only goal. There wasn't a money goal. There wasn't a career goal. It was just to get to New York and kind of trust the universe that I would work out from there. I worked really hard at my first job. It was B&H Photo and Video. It's a big conglomerate for selling photo and video gear to the NFL teams. Definitely the Eagles are a partner of them. Nike, Peloton, Chipotle, some of these larger companies as well. But there wasn't a lot of career growth, and it was something that I really felt was missing. It got me to New York. It's did its job. But as soon as I was in New York, I was full exploration mode. I mean, we'll talk a lot about running on this call today, but I was waking up and running throughout the city, no matter where I was traveling, and kind of picking out cool spots to return to later on. And over the course of a year or so, I just started knowing a lot of spots, whether they were restaurants or speakeasies or sake bars or whatever it was. I really developed a wealth of knowledge. And then, Bucket Listers came on my radar from the main account. It's at Bucket Listers on Instagram. It's got over 1.5 million followers. It's all about world travel and world exploration. That's the brand, right? And then you dive into it and you say, hey, that's more than just an Instagram page. It's actually a marketplace. It acts a little bit similar to an Eventbrite or a Groupon or a Thrillist or an Eater, some of these things. It's almost a mix of all of those. And you see it's individualized per market. And when New York and Chicago had all this knowledge from just living those markets, it really became a fit. And it was tied to having some social media knowledge, but not being a content creator. It was tied to having some sales knowledge, but not being a salesman. So it was really just a mix of wearing many different hats. And once I got into the role, I really took off with it. It's about creating relationships, business development, right? It's not sales. It's more about creating relationships and being really creative to think about how something would sell in a market, whether it's a wine and chocolate class or it's, a larger festival.
that sounds nice.
Yeah.
And the thing about like I do all my own BD and like I have my own business obviously, and I started it about 4 or 5 years ago. And what you say that makes so much sense is like you just need to put yourself, not just like it's easy, it's not easy, but put yourself in their shoes. What is the need? What is the pain? What do they want? What do they want to see? What do they want to feel? What do they want to experience? And that's going to be so affected by where you are, who you know, what you like, right? So you really have to, it's not just one thing. You have to have so many facets of knowledge, right?
Absolutely. And so much of it is overlapping. My first 2.5 years at Bucket Listers, a lot of our events were drinking events, nightlife events. As I got into wellness more and more, we started adding yoga events and tea ceremonies. And you're kind of like, oh, I really have a footprint on the events coming. And when they start to sell, you realize that this is a market, not just a trend that I'm personally going through of wellness and health, but a lot of people are. And I have partnerships now in LA, in Chicago, in New York that are wellness driven, that are wellness festivals or smaller niche things. So it's really great to see that blossom as I have, and to kind of be driving that ship because I'm personally interested and invested in it.
I think maybe part of the silver lining to the pandemic is that people have prioritized
Mm.
their well-being, both their physical and mental. And I just wanted to go back a bit to your description, and I know we've been sort of like a key word here, this exploring, like your job, not only your personal interest in exploring the world, but as part of your role with bucket listers, you need to really explore. You need to have that sense of curiosity and creativity so that you can market all these cool activities and different experiences that people can have. But I imagine in all of the promoting that you do and how connected you are with social media, right? That's pretty heavy, I imagine, with how you can get these experiences and activities that are coming up for bucket listers out into the world. But how do you cultivate more well-being or balance in your life when you're so connected? You know, like when you have to be, yeah, you're sort of, it's sort of just comes with the territory and what you do. Annie and I talk a lot about boundaries. I think it comes up at least
Yeah.
every episode or every other, but can you take us through your personal practice of how you can achieve more balance in what it is you do?
Yeah, 100%. You know, it could be a blessing and a curse. Like I always think about how much I love my job. And recently even I've been writing not work on my to-do list, but ikigai, which is like, you know, you never work a day in your life when you're really enjoying what you do. And it's just a reminder of like, we don't have to do this, we get to do this. And that's one way. But in terms of turning off, you know, I have a lot of outlets. Travel is definitely one of them. I do not work on airplanes. I sleep on airplanes. I recharge on airplanes. I journal, and I really feel comfortable going through an airport. But some of the really key outlets, of course, are running for me. It's outdoor. It's being in nature. It's unplugging, or as I like to say, like, you know, off the radar. Like, you know, you might not be able to reach me. It bleeds into what you mentioned with like the Where's Waldo. Like sometimes people just don't hear from me. Like I'm definitely reachable. I'm not trying to ignore, but I am in a sense off the radar, really enjoying my solo time. So to kind of put that in a concise way, it's being outside, it's running, it's solo time, whether that's solo dinners or solo travel. And then it's mindfulness, it's teaching mindfulness, it's talking about mindfulness, and really diving into a lot of those themes. And that could be as simple as a 10-minute walk, work break. And it could be as powerful as a retreat or reading a book in a park on a sunny day. I follow an Instagram account called New York Weather, basically, and it says 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, says the daily thing. And no matter what, I take something away. So if it says 1 out of 10, it's crappy weather, I still might share that to my Instagram story and say, I'm going to do the opposite. I know it's saying, oh, this is gross, stay outside. I'm going to take that as a challenge to make sure I get outside. If it's a 10 out of 10, you know that I'm going to be probably outside to start my day or making it a priority. So some of it's simple, some of it's really hard when you're tied up in emails and how to take a break, or if it's past 6 p.m., you know, are you still working for a startup or do you need some personal time? I balance that all the time, but these outlets are great. And you know, the other thing is it's often tied to sunrises and sunsets. Like I really enjoy those and I don't want to miss them. So if there's
Yeah.
an opportunity to break up the day and go see one of those, I just feel more balanced and in tune when I'm seeing a sunrise or a sunset.
I was proposed to during a sunrise, so that's that. But Sam, what's your biggest challenge? Like, there's a lot of great stuff here, but what is the biggest obstacle for you?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious to me. I have so many interests, so it's this balance, right? And not always multitasking with those. It is so important for me to be present and focused on one thing at a time. And at the same time, I'm a really talented multitasker. It is something that I do quite often. So if I
That's a
can avoid,
gift.
yeah, it could be, but I mean, we're talking about the same theme, right? It could be a blessing and a curse. Uh,
Right, right.
I often go on runs and call family members. It's a great time. But I also often go on runs and sometimes call business partners, and it's a great time to overlap. But guess what? I'm probably not as present on that
Right.
run. I'm not feeling my body as much. I'm not getting a potential runner's high because I just, you know, kind of multitasked instead of being focused on what I knew my body needed that day.
Well, if I'm running, it's from someone. That's number one. But I'm really, really excited that that does it for you. But I totally like it in a coaching mindset. Like I would say to you, really, and you do both, but that overlap, like if that's your time, if that's your solo time, I would take that as only yours, right? But I get it. I have a lot of kids and I'm doing, and like it's folding laundry and I'm on a business call, right? So, but it's also like, I also want to, I challenge myself to really be in it when I'm in it, right? Like just be there. And then social media takes away from that too, because it's like, am I just doom scrolling or am I actually like sitting on my balcony and like looking at the nature around me?
Sure.
So
Doom scrolling. I like that. I don't ever heard that before.
it's a real thing. It's a real thing, doom scrolling. Apparently you're supposed to get fidgets, like for doom scrolling. But you know, so I think that you have created like a really nice balance. And but one more question. Sorry, I have a lot of questions.
No,
Do you think you've discovered like core values is a really big like crux of what I do? Do you think, and it's okay if no, but like over this time of being with bucket listers or creating, you know, what you've created as your brand and you, do you think you've discovered your core values or did you always, do you know them or have you,
yeah.
have you dug into them?
It's a wonderful question, and I'll start by in college there was a lot of doubt, a lot of not knowing where my career would go or what my passions quite were. They were all just kind of jumbled up in this cloud that is my brain, right? And we haven't spoken about it yet, but I did move to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico for 6 months. I took night classes learning Spanish, and I had a wealth of solo time. And some of the key stuff that came out was I really do trust myself. I really do feel like I show up for myself and I communicate with myself like an immense amount. It's probably through journaling. I journal quite a bit, whether that be manifesting or just journaling about my day or journaling about my dreams and things like that too. But I really feel like the self-trust and the confidence and kind of the decisiveness of my decision making is really key for me. I don't toss and turn over a lot of decisions. I'm kind of like that's my gut feeling and I go after it, whether it's not something someone else would agree with or it's yeah, to put it simply, I do. I feel like I have a lot of core values. I mean, it's tied to fitness and wellness. It's tied to mindfulness. A lot of it's just tied to having really big dreams and kind of always thinking through how to like go after those.
Yeah.
And that's been a key for me too.
Go ahead, Court.
Just speaking of going after and this theme of wellness, I know you have something big in the running world on deck in just a few weeks. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so on October 13th, I'll be running my 6th marathon. It's the Chicago Marathon. Last year I did it as well, a hometown course, just a wonderful opportunity to one, fly in early in Chicago and be with family and kind of stack those two together. But two, you know, a marathon is not just about race day. There has been so much training and no doubt has been the hardest training that I've had for any of these races. The last 3 or 4 races I've done, it's been a little bit of a, you know, rush your training, wake up and run a marathon. And that's amazing that my body can do that. But this has been a lot more demanding and a lot more of showing up for myself. And a lot of runs are not great and they're not smooth and my body might not be feeling it and I'm still showing up. And every single day that I show up, there's more and more and more confidence growing and I'll be aggressively pursuing a personal best in Chicago and we'll see how it goes. And, you know, if you shoot for the stars and you miss, you land on the moon. So I think I'll be able to get a personal best, whether it's qualifying for Boston or not. You know, it's ambitious, but I think that's the best part about it is that I'm feeling these nerves and this doubt. And I also know that I can still really show up and potentially do it. So
So that
yeah.
value you're talking about, Sam, is perseverance. So what sticks out to me is like you just persevere. Like that's that's a value that's really important to you. Like showing up, right? Being there for you, trusting you, having confidence in you. That's one of my values is perseverance. That's why I know. And so it's you didn't say the word, but that's everything that you're saying is pointing to that for me because this is what I do for a living, right? I like help people find their values and be their most authentic selves. Like I just needed to give you the word. You already have it.
Yeah.
But it's like you kind of that's woven for you sort of in between everything that you're doing. It's like I do it and I persevere.
That checks out. You know, prior to moving to Mexico, I never felt like I necessarily needed to persevere. I think that's a really a blessing that I had a great childhood and great family and everything like that. But I almost wanted to put my back against the wall. And one of the reasons I moved there was to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And it totally worked. I mean, it was a safe city. San Miguel is an amazing city to travel, but there was a lot of solo travel. There was a lot of moments where the language of Spanish wasn't quite clicking right away, and you're in some sticky spots. And it helped me. And there's moments that were all about perseverance. It's being in a smaller city that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and how do you adjust? That could be a small issue or a big issue depending on who you are. And then there's also the language barrier and things like that. So when I came back to the States, not only did I feel like I had grown in toughness, but I also felt like I could really tackle anything at the speed that I wanted to. So New York doesn't speed me up. San Miguel doesn't slow me down. It just stays my pace. And sometimes applies to running, run your own race, run at your own pace, know your body, know yourself. Yeah.
So growth mindset for you all the time, growth mindset, which is amazing. That's what I try to teach people. Like so many people are fixed. We're just fixed in this headspace, and it's very hard to break those patterns. And what I see from you is you're just constantly growing and pushing yourself to grow, which is really important.
With hopefully a theme of self-love and self-kindness, like there has to be patience within growth. And I think so many people are trying to sprint.
Just grow, right? It's you got to go
perfect.
through.
The running analogies go on forever because it is a marathon, and it's ongoing. And so yeah, there's a lot of self-love that I practice, and I'm never going to be fully there, but like it's something I try to work on quite a bit, just staying confident and staying proud of what I have accomplished and what I want to accomplish, rather than bullying, which is something that's very easy to do.
What's coming up for me, and all the things that you guys have so beautifully acknowledged and recognized, is your acceptance. Like accepting and allowing what's here. Like you mentioned the weather. So the app you have, it may be like a 1 out of 10, which I've seen you running in like torrential downpour. And you're like, this is refreshing.
It's beautiful out. It's a 10 for me.
Yes.
Right. No such thing as one weather, but yet it can be a 10 out of 10. And you mentioned, some days your body's feeling it. It's like, this is I'm in my flow, like my groove, this is feeling right. Or maybe the mind is not there, but you just allow what's here to be here, right? This is what's here right now, with that sense of kindness. And that really is the greatest act of self-love. When whatever's here, even if it's a 1 out of 10, which again, I don't believe there's a 1 in your book, but you get my point. Like if it's just a little bit of an off day, or it's not the most ideal environment, you really getting back to that perseverance and adaptability. Like you're like, okay, this is what's here. How can we work with what is in the most gentle of ways? And I really admire that in you, because I feel like so often from my own experience, I can see some like beating up, how we have a tendency to give ourselves a hard time for things not being how we want it to be. So to be able to work with what is a huge inner resource that's gonna get you far and qualify you for that Boston marathon. So
one step past that, Court, real quick, is actually, so there's like acceptance, right? And then there's what the next step, like I guess the top of the pyramid is freedom, right? So once you accept what is, you are free. So like, to me, that's my ultimate goal, to get to be free, to be who I am, to do what I want to do, to accept the things I cannot change, to, not tell stories that what people are doing and thinking, to be free, right? It's like you just rid yourself of the shackles of everything else. So I just wanted to note that word, because it reminds me of like what Sam, I think, does, is like his running is freedom, right? It's just his solo stuff is free. It's so important for you to And like, if you're ever involved with someone, or if you are involved with someone, whatever, that looks like, you're going to have to, I think you're going to have to, communicate that that's important to you. Like, it's
Yeah.
a big thing for you, that it's overarching for you, that you need to be free. It doesn't mean you can't be involved. Doesn't mean you can't be, intimate or whatever, but it's a big, it's actually, I don't want to keep going back to this, but it's a really big value that I hear you talking, right? Because it's like, we talk about everything, but really freedom is overarching.
Yeah.
100%. I could never see Sam at a 9 to 5 desk job. That just wouldn't fly. Like, that would be you behind bars. Like, you need that freedom to move and to explore, and that's why I think you're such an asset to bucket listers. So I wanted to talk a bit about, there are so many things that I want to talk about. I'm looking at my notes here to really see where it is I want to go. But I know that you mentioned earlier about slowing down. You mentioned it in regards to running, but it's also something that I pick up on that you've woven into your daily life, whether it's setting those boundaries or those
Yeah.
limits for working. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the ways, aside from running, that slowing down has benefited you in the work that you do and perhaps your personal life as well?
Yeah, of course. The quote I always love is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And it obviously has the word slow in it. But if you think about it, people want to move really fast. They want to answer emails fast. They want to tackle a bunch of tasks. And, there's been times where I'm so spread so thin that, I've spoken to my dad about it, and he goes, why don't you just focus on one thing at a time? And very quickly, you'll actually be going through your to-do list, or what I like to call a get-to-do list, right? And so slow is smooth and smooth is fast is a great reminder for me. And I write it on my arm during marathons, even, because the idea is to move fast, but you can't do it all at once. You have to stay very present and very in tune with your body. And it blends into how I've been able to do it. I never feel like my mind is ahead of my body or is ahead of my soul. So mind, body, soul, or mind, body, spirit, however you want to think about it, has been more aligned since I moved back from Mexico, since I left college and kind of focused more on career mixed with balance, and that life balance that I value so much. But that's how I've been able to kind of like stay slow. Whenever I feel like my mind is getting ahead of my body, maybe I do a mindfulness body scan. Whenever I feel like my body is getting ahead of my mind, maybe it is a rest and recharge day. Whenever I don't feel like I'm tapping into the soul enough, like maybe that is something where I'm reading, I'm taking in more sunlight that day, where I'm trying to learn and listening to podcasts, or whatever it is that really gets my mind going. A lot of that could be visualization. I do a lot of visualizing, especially me at the start line. What type of body type do I have? What type of confidence do I have going into the race? So yeah, the mind, body, soul thing, when it's in tune, you're a little less frantic. You're a little less, out of sync. You're actually very in sync. So that's helped me a ton.
What's a rest and recharge day look like for Sam? What does that look like? A whole
Yeah.
day, you mean? The whole, like, what is it? Is it 2 hours? Is it 8? Is it like
Well, I
just
think
on the
we have
couch and watch TV? Like, what does it look like?
everyone has different definitions of rest and recharge. Mine is
Yeah.
certainly not couch and TV. It's probably some level of learning where I'm, getting an epiphany from a book or a podcast. It's definitely that outdoor time. It usually starts with a bang, meaning like, I'm out doing exercise or I'm out and about. When you're traveling as much as I am, or when you live in New York City, these cities want to work their magic. So if you're inside the apartment all day, you're just denying the fact that the city has all this magic in it. Go explore it. So that could be a run, which is both physical and soulful, right? And it could be amazing. And I am one of my few friends that don't really wear headphones when I run, especially during the marathon. I am all observing and taking in energy from other people and boosting myself up when I'm tired, things like that too. But in terms of a rest and recharge day, It could be a solo dinner. It could be social time with friends that's not really tied to drinking as much anymore, or maybe it is, but it's with some sort of cap on it. Um, Everything kind of feels productive, but at the same time, there's the balance of saying, hey, this doesn't necessarily need to be like productive for career, but it could just be productive just to feel good. It's really quite about communicating how I feel, which is why there's probably fitness involved and sunlight involved. And
Does what, like, does a few hours of just like watching TV and sitting on the couch, like, is that like repulsive to you? Or is that like, I just don't, it doesn't fit in your world?
it would certainly be something that comes after I have been outside or after I have
Yeah.
gone in some exploring and things like that. I got back from a wedding in Colorado and a longer extended Denver trip on Tuesday night, and I ran at 11:30 p.m. It was just I knew my body wanted to move. I had been on an airplane all day. I could have come home and watched TV. It didn't quite even register in my mind that that's something that I would have done, because I'm also holding myself very accountable on this
Yeah,
training, and I really want to
true.
show up for myself. So there's these balances as well. I certainly like to relax. I just think my relaxing is more
Yeah, it's how you
reading,
define
doing
relaxing.
mindfulness. It's swimming. It's being on a beach. It's listening to music. So it's less, Courtney, we've talked about this, but I do think there's a lot of screen time being consumed, and I think that that's so dangerous um, for a lot of people on their minds, and you just need to create a flow state. And how do you create a flow state? Probably minimizing some distractions, and that's probably why I'm off the radar sometimes and people can't reach me. And I've been on Do Not Disturb on my phone for quite some time.
Where's
Um,
Waldo?
where's Waldo?
I
Exactly. It's
love Do Not Disturb. It's
crazy.
like my favorite feature on the iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yes, certainly resting and recharging is not just couch potatoing, but, Sunday football, I am on the couch a little bit, I'm
I
watching.
mean, how could you not be? It's the
I
best.
was I was patiently waiting for us to get here. Listeners, I'm sorry, I have to just say there's three big Eagles fans here, two who are really diehard fans. I have
You're wearing the
three
jersey.
boys. I've been grandfathered in. I guess that's how. But I grew up with a dad and a brother who were into boxing and soccer. So this is newer territory for me than it is for you both. But yeah, I can imagine you spending some time. That would be after probably 18 miles of running. Then I could picture you sitting down and maybe having a beer, some wings, and watching an Eagles game.
Yeah.
But speaking of Eagles game, so we have the big game in Brazil coming
Wait,
up.
hold on, Courtney. So this explains so much about you and me. And so that's what you were raised with. I was raised being carried into the vet because I was little and I didn't need a ticket. Or just because they were so bad, I would just use before your time, Sam.
Yeah.
I would just find a seat. It's like they were so bad. And like I was raised in the 700 level of 600 and 700 level of the vet with like I can't even describe the people around me. So kind of explains my maniacal behavior versus Courtney, who's like, I just got into it and like
Yeah.
mindfulness.
I think you're so cool for that.
By, like dogs.
I'm learning though. Being a mom of three huge Philly
Mhm.
sport, like my sons are the biggest Philly sports fans, and my husband for sure. I'm learning a lot. So it's an intensive course. I'm getting it, and I'm
There's a
into
lot of grit. There's a lot of
a
history.
lot of
There's
grit.
a lot of blue collar, sort of die hard, bleed green, kind of thing going on. I mean, when you have it in you, it's like sometimes I wish it wasn't. And
Yeah.
like I don't miss a pitch for the Phillies. That's a lot of games, right? Like it's like, why am I like this? But I also love it. So it's like talk about finding a balance, right?
100%. I find myself most stressed watching Philly sports. Like really, I don't get super stressed. I mean, there is
Yeah.
work levels of, being maybe low bandwidth and things like that, but it's watching an Eagles game that
Oh
just
yeah.
creates panic.
Well, I mean, it's our history too. It's like I mean, you're young, but like how many times can you lose an NFC championship game until you get to like this is my life. And Philly, that's Philly too. Like Philadelphia is the way we are, it's like my husband's a New Yorker, right? Like I married a New York Giants and Yankees fan, right? And
Wow.
he's like a little jaded at this point. And what I say is like, you haven't had to work so hard. Like you had like what, 27 blah, blah, blah World Series, like who, you kind of like, you care, but it's not like us, like everything is pulling teeth for us, so you get it. You get it.
Speaking of Philly, and I know we're coming down to the last couple of minutes before we have to end the conversation, but speaking of Philly and Eagles game, Sam, I know you've spent many of days in Philadelphia and you've had your share of cheesesteaks. So I just have three questions for you, putting you on the spot here. Favorite place in Philly to get a cheesesteak to date?
St. John's roast pork. St. John's roast pork.
No, I think it's Jim's. We grew up going there and always really
St. John's.
enjoying it. There's a lot of great cheesesteaks out there. I'll say I'm happy anytime I'm really eating a cheesesteak. So it's mattered less and less. It's one of those things that's not like gourmet ever. So I'm always happy just to
Unless you
down.
go to Barclay Prime. If you get the Barclay Prime cheesesteak, it's gourmet. But you're right.
Very
Kind of
fair.
like you throw it
Very
on and it's either good or it's,
Yes.
I appreciate that answer.
And maybe the setting matters more. I had a cheesesteak with your husband Joel at a Sixers game, and like it's just so enjoyable to be in a Philly sports environment eating a cheesesteak. They go together so well. So there's just an extra level of appeal there.
All right, so while we're on the topic, before we end here, I have two more questions. While we're on the topic of food, being that we were talking about the marathon, and I know that you're like crushing it in your training, after you beat the time that you set for yourself for that race, what's the meal that you're dreaming about? What's the meal, the post-run meal you're gonna dive right into?
Very interesting is you actually do eat a lot during the race. There's a lot of people handing you orange slices, cookies. I remember at the LA Marathon, I had a lot of licorice, sweets and treats and stuff like that. Typically, it's a sandwich. A cheesesteak would be an awesome fit. Something that has carbs and energy and mishmash. But, the idea would be to still eat clean. Like you just want to feel good. And so I wouldn't stuff my face. I probably wouldn't eat a ton of dessert. Your body needs a lot more than 24 hours, but that first 24 hours is a pretty important time just to treat your body a little less like, well, a little more like a machine because it just went through this big feat, and a little less of like caring about how good something tastes. It's just about getting good ingredients into your body. So maybe that is rices and healthy foods and veggies and a lot of liquid, things like that, and rest.
Nourishment. Okay, last question. I know we're down to the last minute, but if you could recommend to listeners one podcast that you're listening to right now that can promote deeper well-being, which one would you promote?
Yeah, nice. Well, this one, but in addition, I
He
just
knows
got
where his bread is buttered.
I just got turned on to a podcast called Spiritually Hungry, and I've never been super religious. It is definitely tied to themes of Kabbalah. But there's some really wonderful themes that are dropped in there. And it's one of those really good examples of a podcast that maybe I do turn on as a rest and recharge type day, just to kind of hear some thoughts. I don't necessarily need to align with everything they're saying, but I can create my own themes and my own takeaways from those. And given that I'm learning so much about mindfulness and spending so much time, usually I can dive pretty deep and create my, those own themes on their own. So Spiritually Hungry is a great one. It's definitely on the religious side, but not overly. But it's just been on my radar recently, and I've had 3 or 4 shower episodes where it's playing. And I've been like, oh my God, I have to jump out of the shower and write a note down. So yeah.
Great image to end on right there. So, well, Sam.
What did he say? Wait, shower incidents? Wait, what did he? That's funny.
There are some times where there's a notepad pretty close to the shower, because it's just, yeah, I'm a pen to paper type of guy.
I get that.
Really
I respect that.
I don't want to hold a thought through a whole shower. Yeah, I'd rather get it out and
You could easily get an Alexa, even though we're trying to limit screen time, and just be like, hey, Alexa, I just heard this thing from Spiritual Hunger, write it down, right? Like, it'd probably be easy for you from the shower rather than a notepad, but I respect it.
Yes. The last one I do want to shout out is I listen to the Rick Rubin, John Mayer podcast quite a bit. It's like a 2 hour long podcast, but John Mayer is wonderfully open about his anxiety, about how he tackles the world. So that's Rick Rubin's podcast, but it's that specific episode. Anytime I do a long run, probably like once or twice a month, like I'm turning that on and just listening to snippets about how he deals with it, and he comes off very real and genuine. And it's one I go back to a lot because you listen to it over and over, you get different takeaways. So it's wonderful.
Awesome.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much for all of this. I think we can share that we're family. You're one of my cousins. I'm so proud of you. Like, not to get too mushy-gushy, I'm so proud of all of your accomplishments. I know you're going to crush it with this marathon. You're going to crush it with all that you do. You are a gift to the family and really a gift to this world. So thank you for your time here
It's
with me
amazing
and
to meet
Annie.
you and hear about you and everything you're doing. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And it's lovely talking to you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. See you later.
See ya.
See you.